I mean, if 10% died, that's not too bad. Only 10% died on the trip. I mean, they were buying and selling them like cows. Aborigines, they claimed they were not as evolved as other races because their jawbones are bigger. Jack Cawazzo, that spoke here this morning, has a great section in his book called Buried Alive, out there on the table, about why the Aborigines have bigger jawbones. I mean, he's a dentist. That's what he's done for 30-some years. He studied this all over the world, okay? The Aborigines do have a bigger jaw, so do the Eskimos. Well, there's a reason for that. They use their jaws all the time. I mean, this is a nomad society. They travel around. You don't want to carry a 100-pound toolbox with you when you're traveling around. So you try to use your jaws as a vice because they just wander around and, no certain dwelling place. So if you constantly use your jaw muscles, the bones grow bigger in response to that. Any bodybuilder will tell you the more you build your muscles, the bigger your bones get. See, take a look. Haeckel said, the mental life of savages rises little above that of the higher mammals, especially the apes with which they are genetically connected. These lower races, such as the Vedas or Australian Negroes, are psychologically nearer to the mammals, apes or dogs, than to civilized Europeans. We must, therefore, assign a totally different value to their lives. Do you realize how closely the evolution theory is tied in with racism? At the beginning of the white settlement, there were an estimated 300,000 Aborigines settled all over Australia. Aborigines were viewed by the settlers as primitive, savage, and unchanging. In addition to warfare killings, water, flour, and sugar were poisoned, and diseases, smallpox, measles, and influenza were introduced deliberately to try to kill off the Aborigines. Aboriginal deduction was reasoned to be natural law, as shown by this comment from a settler in 1849. Nothing can stay the dying away of the Aboriginal race, which Providence has only allowed to hold the land until replaced by a finer race. Upwards of 20 to 25,000 Aborigines were killed prior to 1930. Of the 250 languages present before 1788, now only about 20 or 30 are still spoken. In Tasmania, an island off the south of Australia, martial law was declared to solve the black problem, and every single native was slaughtered, with the last woman dying in 1876. What happened to the Aborigines? Oh, they were black. You see, they're inferior. They haven't evolved as far. I don't think you can understand the history of the last 200 years unless you tie in the evolution theory. And I don't think you can understand the future of what's going to happen to this world in the next 15 or 20 years unless you understand this evolution theory. Now, these two people went to Australia on a special mission. Their job was to collect skulls for museums to be displays. All right, here's an interesting part of this article. A New South Wales missionary was horrified by the slaughter by mounted police of a group of dozens of Aboriginal men, women, and children. 45 heads were boiled down and the best 10 skulls packed off for overseas. They shot them to get their heads for museum displays. I asked Dr. Cawazzo today when we were in the green room in there about Smithsonian. He said, I've been in the basement. They have thousands. They have 33,000 sets of human remains in the basement of the Smithsonian. They call it the Army of the Potomac. Why? These were collected for specimens to prove the evolution theory. Got a bigger eyebrow ridge, sloping forehead. Oh, wow, proof for evolution. Charles Darwin's cousin, Galton, was the father of the eugenics movement. The purpose of eugenics was to improve the human race through selective breeding. Okay? Big eugenics movement here in America. They said, you go to Eugenics Archive. Let's see, there's all kinds of websites about that. eugenicsarchive.org tells all about it. Yeah, we're going to improve the human race. The eugenics is the self-direction of human evolution. The Carnegie Institute was very involved in this. Here's a letter, by the way, it was founded by E.H. Harriman. How many saw the movie Butch Cassidy? Remember when the guy's in the train and they're going to blow it up, and he said, "Don't blow it up, Judge Butch. I work for E.H. Harriman." Harriman was really big involved in this. A lot of the super rich people in the 1800s were super involved in this evolution theory because it gives them justification to do what you want. Because if evolution's true, the strongest survive, might makes right. I mean, you just can't understand what happened in this country and in the world in the last 200 years without tying in evolution. It's not just a dumb idea, folks. It's a dangerous religion. American laws empowered doctors to sterilize people they judged to be unfit. As a result, Black estimates some 60,000 people in America were sterilized over the course of the 20th century. People would be brought into hospitals for routine surgery, and they would sterilize them, tie their tubes or do a vasectomy because, oh, well, they're unfit to have children. That was in America. Oh, well, we could talk all day about this. In 1904, the St. Louis World's Fair, they used to hold World's Fair every 4 years. Now they don't do that anymore, but they had 2,000 primitive people on display to show that the white man is superior to the black man. This was in St. Louis. One guy named Ota Benga was taken away from his wife and 2 kids. He was a pygmy from Africa. They put him in a cage with chimpanzees to demonstrate how much the pygmies are like the chimpanzees. This was an evolution display. Ota Benga went insane and killed himself. Theodore Roosevelt thought the Indians were an inferior species. He said it's the white man's destiny to rule this country from shore to shore, called the Manifest Destiny. Roosevelt said, I wish very much the wrong people could be prevented entirely from breeding. He thought the immigrants from Europe, Scotland, Ireland, and the Orient were a threat to American society. How many of you have ancestors from one of those places? Joe, come on, Ireland, put your hand up. Okay. That's where they get that stubborn streak, brother. Okay, okay. In 1871, Congress scrapped all treaties with the Indians and moved them off to the reservation system because they thought, hey, the Indians are inferior. You ought to read about the Trail of Tears, how that the Cherokee Indians were forced out of this area right here and all over the southeast and moved to Oklahoma. 1/3 of them died along the trip. Just read about the Trail of Tears. Why did they do that? Well, they thought they were inferior. There was a big city named Ross's Landing, named after Chief Ross. They moved all the Cherokees out, stole their land, shipped them off to Oklahoma. 1/3 of them died on the way. They didn't want people to remember what happened, so they changed the name of the city to Chattanooga, Tennessee. The Bible says, have we not all one Father? Look, if you think you are superior to somebody because of the color of your skin, number 1, you're wrong, okay? Number 2, you're stupid. Number 3, you're not right with God, okay? The Bible says he made of one blood all nations to dwell upon the earth. Charles Darwin said, a married man is a poor slave, worse than a Negro. We won't comment on the first part of that phrase, but if a professor said that today at the University of West Florida, how long would he keep his job or his life? We could spend all day about Darwin and his racist mentality. We don't have time for all that. Charles, this is also the foundation for communism. Evolution is the foundation. This philosophy removes God and puts man in charge, okay? ACLU, founded by Roger Baldwin, ACLU is the American Communist Lawyers Union, he said communism is the goal. That's what we're trying to accomplish here. Karl Marx wrote a paper when he was 17 telling how much he loved the Lord, wanted to serve God with his life. He went off to college and studied philosophy. First year in college, he lost his faith in God. 75% of kids, by the way, from Christian homes who go to secular schools are going to lose their faith. I just read a survey done a few months ago. They said it's now up to 88% of kids from Christian homes going to secular colleges are going to lose their faith. Karl Marx later wrote and said, my objective in life is to dethrone God and destroy capitalism. Karl Marx's philosophy is based totally on evolution. Communism does not survive without evolution. Ask any missionary. Brother, are there one of these for me here? Does that matter? Doesn't matter? Okay. The Bible says if you give a cup of cold water, in the name of a disciple, you know.